Okay, this is in response to Man Without God 101, who made a couple of interesting questions to my prior video where I say that I deny evolution and macro or neo-Darwinism, as you will, and I'd like to give some reasons why I do that. There are basically two reasons, and I'll tell you some of the books that I have read that made me firmly conclude this. And the two reasons is, number one, the case for abiogenesis. Actually, the lack of the case for biogenesis, or life coming from non-life. And if we're going to talk about evolution, we have to somehow discuss this. And abiogenesis is just, right now, as far as scientists know, is impossible. We have some speculations of how life might have started. Even in 1953, there was an experiment by Stanley Miller where he combined some elements, but then later 10 years, they came to the conclusion that hydrogen could not have been there in the mixture. So by taking it out, no amino acids came out whatsoever. And so abiogenesis is a huge problem for evolution. And number two, which is even a bigger problem, is the fossil record. Now I have a book by the Smithsonian Institute called Fossils, and throughout this whole book we see hundreds and hundreds of fossils, but not one of them, not one, is a transitional step or a transitional fossil that connects one creature or one species to another. Furthermore, Colin Patterson says in here, who's a senior paleontologist at the British Museum of Natural History, if I knew of any evolutionary transitions, fossil or living, I would have certainly included them in my book Evolution. This guy's an evolutionist, so he believes this. This is a major, major problem. Nobody's been able to come up with anything whatsoever. Creatures such as the Archaeopteryx have been a suggestion, but the Archaeopteryx being right there in between dinosaurs and birds. The problem is the dinosaurs have scales, Archaeopteryx has feathers, and these two are very distinct, very different. There's nothing in between that proves it. Many scientists, I've watched many debates where scientists will show the pictures of an animal and then right next to the next species, and they'll say, here is the transitional form. But the one animal on the left will have a fin where the next one already have a foot, a fully functioning foot with claws and everything, a little paw I meant. And there's nothing that transitions one to the other. So this is a major problem. Now regarding some of the ape men that were found, Nebraska man, Piltdown man, Java man, Australopithecus, there were only nothing in large numbers, nothing in wholesome numbers I meant, quantitative numbers were found. Some of these discoveries, for example, I think it was the Australopithecus, they just found a tooth. Now, even though some people say it was a pig's tooth, a human tooth, that doesn't matter. It's beside the point. It was just a tooth. And a whole human being was, or ape-like man, was drawn from that. This is a huge problem. It makes evolution look like a mythological science fiction story or something, like Star Wars or something like that. When you go to a museum, like I went to the Chicago Museum of Natural History, in the main lobby there's a huge brontosaurus. I mean, huge animal, but from tail to head, from top to bottom, there's every single bone is there, or at least, you know, they say 90% of the bones or so. But that's not the case with the missing links for the human species. Nothing like that has ever been found. So these are some of the problems. Now, I read here Richard Dawkins, The Blind Watchmaker, and I thought it was a fantastic book. I think Richard Dawkins is a brilliant scientist. However, there are some things that we have to consider. For example, he says right in the beginning of the book that when we look out there to nature, it appears that there's an intelligent designer behind it, but don't be fooled, because there isn't. And this is just absolutely it's foolish to make a statement like that, because, you know, for the most part, I know this is not scientific, but if it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck. And I'd like to just say one real quick defense to creationism that has been a rock in the shoe for evolutionists. And I thought it was interesting that Richard Dawkins in this book kind of tackles the problem, and it's the bombardier beetle, which is a little beetle that mixes a couple of chemical compounds inside his body, and an explosion comes out and he scares away frogs and animals that want to eat him. Now these two components, these two chemical elements are hydroperoxide and hydroquinone, and they must be mixed by a catalyzer, and evolutionists can't say where did these things come from, which one was first, how did they get there. Richard Dawkins talks about it in his book, in which he says this: that it rests on the fact that the system's elements happen to be around. Thus evolution might be possible. And this is the major problem that we have. Things don't just happen to be around and just happen to come together for absolutely in a meaningless environment, and things just happen like that. It just doesn't make any sense. Here's a book that I highly recommend, Michael Behe's Darwin's Black Box, in which he talks about a mousetrap, and the mousetrap has different components that is needed for it to work. So if you take away the spring, that mousetrap won't work. A mouse will, if a mouse walks up to a mousetrap without a spring, it doesn't work. So things don't just, if things don't happen to be around, something doesn't work at all. A bombardier beetle is the same thing. He didn't just happen to get the hydroquinone around out of somewhere where nobody can explain. The only logical conclusion that we can come from creatures such as these is an intelligent designer. So I leave you with something that I thought was very interesting, where more than 600 scientists with PhDs signed a document called A Scientific Dissent from Darwinism. And it says, "We are skeptical of claims for the ability of random mutation and natural selection to account for the complexity of life. Careful examination of the evidence for Darwinian theory should be encouraged." And I encourage you to do the same thing. I mean, where science has come now in terms of examining what a cell is, its complexity is infinite. And to say that without any of the components, and these components just happen to be around somewhere, and that's what makes it work, it's just foolish nonsense in my opinion. And I'm open to your comments. I just hope that I won't get the comments of skeptics that have nothing to say except, well, the Bible says that the earth is flat and that's it. And come on, let's get past that and let's attack the issue here at hand. But thank you for watching.